All right, what's going on, party people? Lots of news going on as training camp is drawing to a close. The Baltimore Ravens had a slew of news, a slew of injuries, slew of this, that, and the other, some coleslaw of news. Obviously, we'll get right into it. Rashad Bateman. So news comes out today. John Harbaugh announces after practice that Bateman will be undergoing groin surgery. However, the timeline doesn't really change ultimately. So today it felt like, the S word surgery had this really big ripple and kind of ramifications around the NFL is writing articles and everybody's writing articles. I have one that should be up on Baltimore Beatdown, whatever, just, news articles. So yeah, the timeline still remains about the same. There's various PTs, doctors of physical therapy on Twitter. There's guys from fantasy blogs and a guy from PFF and some other PTs. It's like there's kind of these conflicting things, but they all basically have the same sentiment. It sounds like it's going to be a month at the minimum. Putting it right around the opener would be the fastest timeline. And ultimately, I've seen 58 days was an average of a study of NBA players, which, is going to be somewhat similar. A wide receiver does a lot of things that a basketball player does. Continuing on, so, let's put that target date for, let's say misses week 1. We're going to say it's week 2 against the Chiefs, probably a little more unlikely. Week 3, the Lions, feels like, that could be a real possibility. That would be a really great situation if Bateman's able to kind of practice, come back, fully participate, and then be good to go in week 3 against the Lions. A team, any given Sunday, the Ravens might lose. Dan Campbell, win one for the whatever. The Lions are not a good football team. They're not going to be able to stop the run. The Ravens are probably 10, I would think at least 10-point favorites currently. Injuries can happen, whatever. Any team can win any Sunday, whatever, but going to be taking the Ravens on that one. So that would be a good game for him to come back, play against a maybe, lesser opponent that has a new head coach and a lot of young players and kind of get his feet wet a little bit and then play in week 4. So ultimately the Ravens travel to Detroit, to Denver back to back. So feels like those are, starting to become likely. And then week 5 against, I believe the Colts would be maybe the latest that we'll see Rashad Bateman back, I would think, barring, no crazy setbacks. So October 3rd, October 11th, I would say, that week, the first week of October, sounds like from all the research that I've gathered from people that are smarter than myself in the subject matter, that Bateman should be back sometime. I think worst case would be week 5, but ultimately it is what it is. It's better to get this surgery over with, better to get him recovered and rehabbed and getting going again, as opposed to, maybe we're not sure if it's a hernia. We're not sure if it's an abductor. Those details haven't been released. Maybe we'll hear those eventually, but at the end of the day, you don't want a lingering injury that can do more constructive damage to a young player, especially one that you have a lot of stock in and have high expectations for. So shut him down, let him take a step back. I'm not here to point fingers, but ultimately, this injury was kind of lingering for a while. It felt like it was the same tightness and it was an upper inner leg and he missed some time and then he came back and then he missed some more time and then it ultimately resulted in injury. So hopefully that's a lesson learned there. Not here to point any fingers, but it felt like, maybe it's him, maybe whatever. So it just pushed it a little too hard. It happens to the best of us. So, or the best of them. I am not one of the us. I am not a professional athlete. So they know better than I do in the end, but it just felt that way a little bit. Moving on from Bateman, ultimately, I think this is a great opportunity for Tylan Wallace, especially as a guy who played a ton of boundary at Oklahoma State, always on the outside, specifically the right side, had experience at that X position, had experience at the, off and on the line of scrimmage, dealing with press. The Senior Bowl, he showed the ability to deal with press pretty decently. I think that he's been a really consistent figure this far into training camp. You don't hear days where, Tylan Wallace was lighting the world on fire. He was, moving heaven and earth today. He was torching the DBs, but consistently every day he's making plays on broken broken plays. He's working back to the ball. He's working over the middle of the field, making tough catches. And the thing about Tylan Wallace, the two things that really stood out during his time at Oklahoma State were late tracking and late adjustments with really good body control. We've seen that. The part that we haven't seen that makes this training camp so exciting, or excuse me, this preseason so exciting, is what he can do after the catch. The dude was a Mack truck in a 195-pound body in the Big 12. It's a little different playing, in the NFL, of course. The level of competition's higher and all that good stuff. But he looks to have translated his game pretty well to the NFL. He's not the most explosive guy, but he brings the wood. He lays the wood as a blocker. He competes really hard and was really, really difficult to bring down after the catch. He kind of just has an aggressive, work towards the end zone mentality. Was able to snake his way through some contact as well as just straight up run guys over. So I think getting his feet wet in that sense in the next couple of preseason games will be a lot of fun. And then moving forward, continuing that. Of course, James Prochet, the guy who has been, I mentioned Wallace hasn't been moving heaven and earth. James Prochet has been. He's been consistently making contested catches. He's been consistently, basically what is separating James Prochet right now and his strongest attributes that make it understandable why the Ravens didn't really get to see a ton of it last year as a rookie, someone learning the offense. You don't have a preseason. It's his focus, his hands, and his competitiveness. And it's really hard to get a true evaluation on someone's competitiveness and focus in a practice setting as opposed to a game setting. We've seen Miles Boykin, his rookie year, went from third team to first team in like 2 days. He was skying over Jimmy Smith, skying over Marlon Humphrey, ripping the ball out of the air. He looked like Megatron. He looked like, whatever, whoever you want to say, Randy Moss, whatever in practice. But he wasn't as confident in gameplay. I mean, he did have good moments in the preseason, so that kind of puts my own foot in my mouth. But he had some nice moments in preseason, and Trace McSorley was throwing him up some 50-50 balls, something Lamar Jackson doesn't do a ton. Anyway, seeing if Prochet's competitiveness and his focus remains on game day. And, he only had 3 targets last year. We saw a little bit more routes than that. I think he can separate a little bit over the middle of the field. I think he works in space well. I think he knows how to read coverage and kind of move pre and post snap and do those kinds of things. So I think that he's going to have a good year. I think he's going to have a good preseason. He's been one of the guys that even before camp started and he had this awesome camp, I've been saying I can't wait to see what he can do in the preseason. And see if he can look like a real NFL starting slot receiver that separates himself. And then finally, Duvernay is the other beneficiary kind of getting more reps here. Duvernay's been the one of those 3 of Wallace and Prochet and himself that has had time in the starting offense. And while it hasn't been Lamar Jackson the whole time, he's been getting a lot of starting reps as a flanker, the guy who's off the line of scrimmage. He's gotten some reps in the slot, 7-on-7s, everybody's moving all around, working different route combinations and things. But Duvernay, they seem to really like as a vertical flanker who's alone towards the boundary. His releases look a lot cleaner and more explosive coming off the line, threatening more suddenly. He can accelerate well, but there's just more nuanced movement when there's someone standing in front of you trying to prevent you from gaining momentum. So he looks a little bit more shifty, a little bit more dynamic in vertical movement, not quite as stiff as he was. He looked a lot like a running back coming out of Texas. Great linear speed, very physical player, good hands as well. Now he's starting to add a little bit more explosive finesse, which I guess is kind of an oxymoron, but bear with me. So I think that he's going to get a lot of reps on the outside. People don't realize that 50% of his reps just about last year were on the outside. He did play 33% of Raven snaps last year. That didn't result in a ton of targets. So, him working with the first team, he's going to be a huge beneficiary of someone who didn't get enough time with Lamar Jackson last year. Lamar's back from COVID. Lamar is in camp. So, everything's settled there. So Prochet and Duvernay, of course, Sammy Watkins, Hollywood Brown will be back. But those 3, Wallace, Prochet, and Duvernay are going to get time with Lamar Jackson. They're going to get a ton of reps. Prochet's probably going to get more first-team reps than they imagined at this point now. So all those guys are going to be moving up the depth chart 1 notch because of the Bateman injury. So there's silver linings there. And in addition, that Bateman can just get this behind him. It felt like it was something lingering, and it turned out to be the worst, not the worst case scenario, but it turned out to give. It's better that it gave now than in a week or 2 or, in the beginning of September or at the end of the preseason, whatever. So get it out of the way now. John Harbaugh said it was a good thing that he's having surgery because he might not. I mean, this was the implication. He said he said something along the lines of he might not have to go on the IR to start the season and miss the first 3 games. So it sounds like they're optimistic that he can come back by week 3, by week 2, but don't push it. They know better than me, whatever, just don't push it there. So that's everything with Bateman. Sammy Watkins had an outstanding day today. He tore it up, scored multiple touchdowns. Him and Lamar are starting to develop a really nice rapport. They had that long touchdown on Tuesday, and Watkins had a vet day yesterday. So Watkins going to get more time with Lamar as well, keeping him kind of, ramped down and building up through the regular season, and limiting reps is probably going to be different because of Bateman being out. You probably were thinking Bateman's going to have, 30 to 40% of snaps in the first quarter of the season, and then move to the 50 to 60% range. And, him and Watkins kind of swapping that way, where you can limit Watkins for crucial situations, crucial games, keep his workload down to prevent injury. Now they might have to rely on Watkins even more than initially expected. So it's good to see him doing well. Hopefully he gets a lot of vet days. I think they're being really smart with Watkins and the type of player he is. And there's a Wired coming out from the Ravens, and, he's just seething with energy. So it's the type of dude he is. Ultimately, there's been, a litany of players that have benefited from getting more reps, as the Ravens do have a ton of guys getting vet days, a ton of guys out. Bradley Bozeman and Kevin Zeitler have both returned to practice this week, which the Bateman news kind of put a dark cloud over. But it's really nice to know that Bozeman and Zeitler are both already working back. Hollywood Brown, they've been working very, they laid it out. He was a precautionary deal the first day of camp. They shut him down. He's been hauling his tail up and down the practice field, throwing medicine balls over his head and then sprinting, and then throwing medicine balls over his head and then sprinting. So it seems like they're really testing that hamstring now. So he should be in good shape. Get him ramped up, make sure he gets a nice, 2, 3, 4 weeks with Lamar, all that good stuff. So I think that there's a lot of good news as well. The defense, knock on wood, of course, very healthy at this point in time. Guys like Calais Campbell are good. Guys like Brandon Williams are good. The linebackers, Patrick Queen and Malik Harrison, have not missed any time. They're getting all the reps that they can handle. Deshaun Elliott, Chuck Clark getting tons and tons of reps. Brandon Stevens getting a lot of reps. Marlon, gets a vet day, which I think is wise. He's started to peak, it feels like, at this point in camp, and really be fine-tuned. Tone it down. Lay it back a little bit. He's very intense. He's a very durable player to this point in his career. But, at this point, it's pitch count, it's maintenance, and then getting guys like Chris Westry more reps, getting guys like, Ardarius Washington more reps, Geno Stone more reps, all those kinds of players. Even Amon Marshall and Otaro Alaka, it felt like they kind of apparently have taken a step back with. They don't have those guys at practice, both recovering from major injury. So that definitely hurts their chances. But I think there's a lot of good going on at Ravens training camp right now that's kind of had this like little injury thing over top of it. But look around other teams, man. I mean, Darren Waller hasn't practiced in 8 days. Elijah Moore had to walk off with a trainer today. Injuries happen in camp. It is what it is. The Ravens have had pretty good luck that way. And I do say luck, ignoring the training staff that has probably had a lot to do with that. But there is luck. There are accidents. Jimmy Smith did get hurt. Got good news on that. Rashad Bateman didn't have something that's season ending. Jimmy Smith didn't have something that's season ending. So hopefully the Ravens are able to work through those issues and continue to stack days, continue to build up. Ben Cleveland also left practice yesterday. He was out today as well. So Cleveland getting a little bit of ice, a guy that was really stiff last week. It's hot as hell out there. He's 360 pounds, going at it every day for 3 hours a day with 1 day off throughout the week. So it's a good thing to try and take a step back there moving forward. So Odafe Owe was out of practice yesterday, as well as Dalen Hayes-Lipoff. They both returned. And here's a little soundbite from Alejandro Villanueva, who had some really kind words to talk about Dalen Hayes as well as Odafe Owe at the press conference where he spoke to the media for the first time. So here we go.
We've got some time to compete against some of the rookies, Dalen Hayes and Odafe Owe. What have you seen out of those guys?
So Dalen Hayes is an unbelievable motor. I think that's going to help him a lot. I think a lot of times the play seems to be over, and then it's never over for him. So that's his greatest asset. And then Odafe is possibly the fastest player on the football field. And he will be probably the fastest in most of the games that he'll play. So his speed is definitely an asset. It's crazy to see somebody come off the edge that quickly. Is not something that he ran the 40 and whatever he did, and now he's here and he's a lot slower. The kid has some speed, but he has to put the whole thing together. And so for me, I'm his number one fan. I want to cheer him. He's my He's my horse in the race, and I'm going to be on the bench, hopefully watching him make a lot of great plays this year.
So Villanueva, with kind words, of course, you're not going to rip on your teammates at a press conference, so take that with a grain of salt. But, I mean, OA being the fastest player on the field, you do want to see him able to translate that 40 time, translate his play speed in college and all that good stuff. So for Villanueva to say he's the fastest player on the football field when you're on a football field that has, Sammy Watkins and J.K. Dobbins and Marlon Humphrey and guys like that. And who's going to see that speed more than Alejandro Villanueva, who has been battling OA a ton. And I think that kind of has taken some put a sour taste into the mind or mouth of some, where you're like, oh, well, Villanueva is getting beat by OA, and OA is a 7-year veteran who's saying he's going to be the fastest player on the field most of the time. That goes to show how fast OA is. That also goes to show that Villanueva is getting tested supremely off the edge by someone with a ton of speed. And those are the type of players that give the Ravens problems on that right side, is those speed rushers, those guys who can break around, get to Lamar quickly. Lamar is going to be able to erase a lot of problems, but for Villanueva to be switching from the left side to the right side, he also spoke today about, the classic switching of the motor skills, opposite hand, opposite foot, you're driving off of and using on the outside. So, that's all good stuff. But to have someone testing him speed-wise, making him get vertical in his pass set, is going to be an advantage. You want to get reps against guys that are going to challenge you in difficult areas. So that's why, Marlon Humphrey was excited about this receiving core earlier before, Hollywood misses time and Bateman misses time and all that good stuff. But Prochet stepped up. Watkins has made plays, whatever. We've spoken about that, but it's really nice to hear that OA has that element. So kind of moving into players that I'm really intrigued to see so far, based on what I've seen in camp and ahead of this preseason matchup with the Saints and extending beyond. I'm going to run through a list of guys that, are healthy right now, have been available, are getting reps, have looked, good, or have something at stake, whether it's a roster spot or playing time. I also have an article, so it's kind of in written form, but you can check that out on BaltimoreBeatdown.com. But obviously, the first guy is James Prochet. I already touched on that. The Ravens have been horrible in contested catch situations. The Ravens, over the last 2 years, have only had one player in one season. So it was Mark Andrews in 2020 to have at least 10 contested catches in a season. And so Mark Andrews had exactly 10. So there's been 57 players over the last 2 years that have had 10 contested catches. Andrews is the only one for the Ravens. Ravens have really struggled in contested catch situations. Andrews is by far the best one. He's even had difficulties with drops and things like that. And of course, he is getting a lot of difficult targets, but you think it drops like the Chiefs and things like that. I'm not here to knock on Andrews, but I'm here to say James Prochet has consistently shown the ability to reel in contested catches and tight coverage. That instills confidence into a quarterback, knowing I can throw this. I can confidently step into this throw and put it where he can get it or make a play on it. And I believe that he's going to bring that down. So seeing Prochet able to do that in games is going to be a big, big, big deal. And the other area where the Ravens have really struggled is missed and forced tackle rate after the catch, yards after the catch in general. The Ravens don't have any player on their roster. The only guy who was relatively high was Willie Snead last year. He was about 20% of his receptions. He forced a missed or broken tackle. I think that was 44th. So the Ravens don't have any returning player from last year on their roster that was forcing a top 80 missed or forced tackle rate, according to Sports Info Solutions. So while Prochet is not this burner, while he's not someone that can break angles, he is, a punt returner. He was a punt returner. He's got wiggle to him. He's got a little toughness to him. So if he's able to provide after the catch as well, that's going to be huge. The next guy that I'm really looking at is Tyree Phillips, who I believe has made a really, really, really big jump in year 2 based on just what I've seen. He's taken a ton of snaps at the left tackle position in lieu of Ronnie Stanley. He's probably been the starter there more than not in the first team reps. And Phillips last year, I mean, he's just a very interesting case to me. Ultimately, Phillips was a guy who he was the only rookie who started on the Ravens offensive line in week 1, aside from Ronnie Stanley, a top 10 pick, left tackles or Notre Dame starting left tackle for a couple of years. You're pretty confident with Ronnie Stanley there. Only week 1 starter since Ronnie Stanley, and dating back a decade. They do that without a preseason. The Ravens do that without a preseason for Phillips. They also do that while he's converting from a right tackle at Mississippi State to a right guard. So that speaks to what they, think of him, work ethic, and in terms of ability to execute his assignments. Justin Madubuike had a quote a couple, I think August 6th, that said Tyree Phillips feels like a double team when he comes downhill, but it's only one guy. He can explode out of his stance. I think he can be an asset in the run game. He got thrusted into a really tough spot last year. The Ravens needed a right guard, someone to fill in. They're used to Yanda there. They end up, having Phillips start and be really rocky and consistent over the first 5 games. Then they start that platoon with DJ Fluker. So it wasn't good. Phillips was not good last year. He, according to Sports Info Solutions, had 13 blown blocks on only 402 total blocking snaps. So to compare that again, 13 blown blocks where he messed up his assignment and that led to a negative play, versus Orlando Brown Jr. or Bradley Bozeman, who both had 15 as opposed to Phillips 13. Both of those guys played over 900 snaps last year. So in over double the amount of blocking snaps, Phillips had the same amount. He's basically double the rate of blown blocks. For every one time Bradley Bozeman or Orlando Brown is making a mistake, Phillips is making 2. So, you're hoping he can progress there. I think he worked really hard this offseason. He still can be a little bit too high cut. He is still, his feet are quicker than they were. It appears. I don't have tape. I am trying to watch from, 30, 50, 100 feet away, sometimes, 50 yards away. But to me, it looks like he's got a mean streak and he looks more confident. He has been tested and beaten at times for sure, but he's also had some really nice reps. He's kind of thrown guys to the ground in one-on-ones at times. And I think that, it's difficult right now. Do you want him at tackle? Do you want him at guard? Is he going to be the swing tackle? Is he going to be the starting left guard? Ben Cleveland, it feels like the kind of fanfare, it might be a little higher than where the Ravens are right now. I think that, they've had him starting at left guard a lot of the time, but Phillips is also at left tackle. So the competition to me is really between those two, and you want to put your best 5 on the field. So if you're most confident in Phillips as a second-year guy who had starting experience last year, who's had a good offseason, as opposed to a rookie who is still developing, kind of stiff, has a ton of really great attributes, Cleveland might not be a lock to start week 1 is what I'm getting at, but camp is still young. Cleveland's missing time right now. Maybe it's just a little, a little injury, or he's hurt, not injured. So it's been a, up and down camp for Cleveland, but Tyree Phillips is a guy I'm really curious to see. Brandon Stevens and Ardarius Washington, I kind of grouped together. They're at very different places, but they need to show the same things. Stevens is secure. He's a 3rd-round pick. He's developmental, and the Ravens know that. Converted from running back, we all know that. He has snuck his way, or I guess worked his way into first-team dime reps. So when the Ravens go, a lot of times in practice, they're going 2-minute drill, first-team offense, first-team defense, and they go second-team, second, third. Stevens, in dime packages, when Chuck Clark and Deshaun Elliott are on the field, has been spending a lot of time as the single high guy or in 2 high, where Chuck Clark is consistently playing that dime linebacker spot, and Deshaun Elliott is either 2 high or he is going into the slot and covering. So they like Deshaun Elliott's ability to go into the slot. They like him on tight ends. They match him up on Mark Andrews a lot. So Stevens is getting trusted right now, just a couple weeks into camp before a preseason game, to be the deep middle in dime packages right now. What we need to see out of Stevens: open field tackling ability, fitting the run properly. Those are huge. He doesn't have a ton of experience there. The NFL is going to be quicker. The blocking schemes are going to be executed faster. The running back is going to emerge quicker. He needs to be able to read and fill. So that's what we're looking for. Ardarius Washington, same kind of stuff. Open field tackling ability against the run, ability to fill. He has worked a lot more out of the slot than Stevens, but over the last week or so, he's been really starting to ramp up his level of play. I think on Monday, he had 3 pass breakups and an interception. So he's kind of worked himself more into the safety rotation where it felt like they were using him in the slot. Now he's doing both. They blitz him a good bit, all those good things. So again, you're going to see Stevens probably in some middle of the field close coverages, your cover 1s and your cover 3s. And I think he's going to get a ton of time. He's a developmental piece as a 3rd-round pick in ways. So I believe Chris Hewitt called him a neophyte at the position in pressers yesterday. So all of that is very interesting. And beyond Stevens, it's, Stevens is definitely probably going to be that 3rd safety right now. And then they're going to need a fourth. Jordan Richards, they love on special teams, but they do not like him on defense. Anthony Levine, probably like on defense and matchups better. So it doesn't feel like Jordan Richards is probably going to stick around. Then you've got Geno Stone, who looks a little quicker than, maybe last year in some things. So Geno Stone, watch out for as well. But I'm very intrigued by Washington as well as Stevens. So those two guys. Another guy people are not talking about enough, plain and simple. He's gotten some buzz. It's Josh Oliver, man. Josh Oliver has been a playmaker through and through this entire camp. Got first team reps in 12 personnel, especially if it was spread 12 personnel very early. Day one, I think, the first open day of camp. Oliver's coming in short motion in the slot. They use him in motion quite a bit. Going to be a Hayden Hurst type of guy. He's by far, I think he might be the most familiar player to Andrews' skill set, Mark Andrews' skill set, that the Ravens have had, including Hayden Hurst. So I actually went back through and I was looking at his combine score, which, just gives you an idea of his athletic profile. It was only a couple years ago. So he tested his biggest testing similarities in terms of RAS. That's relative athletic score, which is size, speed, explosion, and agility. These are the comps that were at the very top. 84th percentile comp was number one, Ed Dixon, former Raven. 78th percentile below, I think it was Kelly Warning, that tight end that was just drafted, whatever the hell his name is. So 78th percentile Hayden Hurst, 76th percentile Eric Ebron. All four of those guys are between 6'4" and 6'5". All of them ran between 4'6" and 4'6'7" in the 40. All of them were 249 to 255 pounds at the combine, and all of them jumped between 31.5 inches vertically or 34 inches vertically. So between there. Of those, Oliver has the best vertical at 34 inches. He's the tallest at 6'4" and 6'8", so 3/4, and he was the heaviest, as well as having the biggest hands and the longest arms. 33.5-inch arms. That's almost offensive tackle length. A lot of guys that start have offensive tackle length arms. And he also had 10 3/4-inch hands, which was his highest outlier of, highest percentile that he was in of any individual measurement or score. He was in the 97th percentile for hand size. We see him displaying monster hands where he can engulf the football and rip it away. He's been working up the seam really well. He's worked underneath well. I think he's really vicious after the catch. He has a mean stiff arm on Geno Stone. He's been kind of trucking into linebackers, and they're not wrapping up to the ground, but he's knocking into some linebackers and moving them back. So I think he can do some things after the catch. And for him, 2 years, tons of injuries. He's only played 4 games. I think he has 6 targets and 3 catches. So just seeing him do it in games, seeing him translate to the preseason, and then hopefully the regular season is going to be really reassuring. But if he continues to play anything like he has this far, that 7th round pick to Jacksonville is as good as gone. A couple of my friends that cover the Jaguars don't know why the Jags gave up on Oliver and traded him. They were not happy, but they weren't saying he's going to be a world beater. But to me, it's like having that guy to back up Mark Andrews is really assuring. So he's going to have a unique skill set. He's going to provide another element. He's a better pass catcher than Nick Boyle and can do some things out of 12 personnel. I don't think he's looked bad as a blocker. Pernell McPhee has moved him, but he's still getting to where he needs to be to cut guys off, and he's been physical. So the blocking aspect is going to be paramount for him to increase his playing time. Justin Matabuike, next guy. Trained with Aaron Donald, was outstanding down the stretch when Calais Campbell and Brandon Williams went down last year. He trained with Aaron Donald for 4 days this year. So seeing him, you just want to see him in the preseason outclass other guys. You want to see him look like a legitimate, really good starter or maybe star level player sometime in the near future. And him doing so in some reps in the preseason will be encouraging. Broderick Washington goes along with that. If Broderick Washington can give you confidence, and he's been really sharp against the run, man. Really sharp against the run. Gets in the backfield quickly. He's been troublesome especially the backup offensive lineman. Those guys can really give you reassurance in the preseason. Long story short, Chris Westry, the next guy I'll touch on. You've heard me talk about him a ton. Another combine freak guy at his pro day. He ran 4.31, 38-inch vertical at 6'4". I'm back to just some background on him. He started 33 games at Kentucky. He was a starter as a freshman. And by he was all SEC freshman team. And then by the time he was a junior, he got benched. And then as a senior, he was rotational and never started. So he kind of worked backwards. His biggest thing in college was getting lost in, zone situations and 3-man route combinations and 2-man route combinations and things like that, and kind of not being sure of himself. But if you line him up in man coverage, he's really tough on small receivers. He has the feet and the speed of a much, much, much smaller man. He's very lanky, very thin. He's like even more kind of, pterodactyl-like than Marcus Peters. He's pretty broad shoulders, but very, very skinny at the waist. So seeing him be able to be physical will be a big question mark there. But he's been on receivers, on outbreaking routes on the sideline, like flies on shut your mouth, to quote LeBron James in a commercial a couple years ago. So he's an intriguing option there. He could very well play himself onto the team. I think he has a good shot right now. Talked about Tylan Wallace already. Sack Daddy. It's put up or shut up time for Sack Daddy. Have you improved since you were a rookie? Are you still just kind of trying to run through guys? Have you at least increased your ability to diagnose blocking concepts off the first 2 steps of a play where you're confident in executing assignments? Doesn't look like he's added any diversity or technical prowess to his pass rush. It's still kind of trying to just overpower guys. He's a lot leaner. They've been dropping him into coverage a lot. He's been working in space a lot. So he's got to, maybe he can do some things inside, sub package, overwhelm guys with some get off and some length there. And special teams, he's going to have to kill it. He's going to have to absolutely kill it on special teams, or I don't know if he's making this roster. Ben Bredesen, another one who's gotten his butt kicked by Calais Campbell and some other guys at times, but also, he hasn't been really in the competition for left guard, but I see some really nice, whenever I'm really close and get to see him from 20, 30 feet in live drills, his hands are lightning quick, man. He's grabbing guys by the wrist as soon as they lunge for him. He's got some real good karate going on. His hand placement's really good. He has really short arms. So he's a shorter, squattier guy, short arms. He's very mobile, but he's not going to be able to reach really well. Guys with length are probably going to be able to overwhelm him. So he has to out-technical pass rushers, has to out-technique guys in space, take really sharp angles. He has to overcome his stature. And, I've seen some good things in his anchor. He creates a really nice back bend. He gets his, he lifts up through and kind of forces pass rushers to get really high at times. So we only got to see 6 snaps of him last year. So it's going to be good to see him in the preseason, see what he does when the lights come on. The inside linebackers in general, Queen and Harrison, no preseason last year. Queen talked about it himself. He really struggled diagnosing 3-man route concepts. He said he didn't see a lot of those at LSU. So it was a lot of 2-man stuff, and adding that third guy in there has kind of confused him. He's tried to study as much as he could this offseason. That was definitely a point of emphasis for him, but he looks nasty as a blitzer, even more so than last year. He gives running backs problems in blitz pickup. His pursuit looks better. He looks a little bit calmer, a little bit more confident. He's still, he had an opportunity to get an interception against Mark Andrews on Tuesday. He, he had to jump up for the ball, and the ball kind of went through his hand. Like, he got a finger on it and it went through his hands. He was really upset. You want to see him able to maybe generate some turnovers in the passing game. That would be awesome. And Malik Harrison. Malik Harrison is an ultra physical block shedder who's a menace in the run game, but can he take that step in coverage assignment wise and speed up his process enough that he can look like an every down player? That's his big thing right now. I feel like for the preseason. Beyond that, Chris Board has a guaranteed $1 million contract, so he's definitely got the upper hand. Him, LJ Fort, not sure how many they're going to keep, but then it's Christian Welch and Otara Alaka. Welch to me looks good, man. I think Welch is a great special teams player. I think that he's going to be able to come downhill in the run game, and he's very tall and long in the pass game. So, I don't think he's an awful inside linebacker. I think he's got a lot of special teams value, but they definitely have the upper hand to Board. Away again. We talked about Owe. Calais Campbell was talking about how he has infinite potential, and quote unquote his ability to be an athlete and go out there and make plays is quite spectacular to see. So he's gotten all the buzz in training camp. According to Jeff Zrebeck, at one point, Owe easily beat left tackle Tyree Phillips to sack Jackson in 1 11-on-11 session. The offense obviously didn't want that to happen again. So later in practice, Owe was triple teamed on a play. He was blocked by Villanueva, guard Patrick McCarry, and then chipped by J.K. Dobbins. So Owe, you just want to see him. Can he bring guys to the ground in space? Is he going to be able to tackle well? Can he play with power? Can he work through? Does he have inside counters? If a guy is vertically setting on him well, is he able to beat them back inside or convert speed to power with a stab? Justin Houston, I think, is going to be so paramount for him in keeping a neutral track that allows you a 3-way go inside, through, and outside, and then being able to use long arms and stabs to kind of jolt tackles back. And then depending on how they react to that, you can go with a chop from your outside hand or with a lift for your outside hand, and then pair that with a swim, or you can try to work inside with the stab. You can stab and then chop through and emerge. So those are things that Justin Houston's been notorious for in his time in Kansas City. And when he was, second all time in a single season sacks. So all that stuff is going to be great for him. Obviously the quarterbacks, Huntley and McSorley, those guys are going to be competing. It feels like Trace has been more consistent as time has gone on. Huntley's been maybe more spectacular, but Trace has shown more consistency with ball placement. I think Huntley's a little bit better of an athlete, but you've heard a ton about those guys. They're going to get all the preseason snaps. Those are the only other two guys besides Lamar. So, I'm guessing they're both going to get a half, and that's going to be the deal. We'll see if Lamar's out there. I think with him coming back from COVID, you might not want him in the first game, but Harbaugh is non-committal about that. Cleveland, we talked about. He's a woolly mammoth in space. He can block out the sun. He, when he's pulling or in space, he forces defenders to make not business decisions, but medical decisions about colliding with him. So he just needs to mind his feet, stay balanced, not overcommit, and not try to get too aggressive to try to help when he's uncovered and then leaving a giant gap, because I think that teams are going to try to draw him out of his gap and then delay blitz or loop back through there. So him keeping his head on a swivel, staying neutral, using his length in pass protection when he's not covered. But his anchor is insane, man. I mean, if you want to run through him, you can't. You simply cannot. So that's his kind of bread and butter, and then being able to drive block and work combos off the ball. So you just want to see him be more balanced. We're not sure if he's going to be able to go this week. I from the sound of it, he will, at least if there's no other injury, be able to go next week for preseason, but we haven't heard that yet. I'm sure he wants to go. And the final guy I'll touch on is Benjamin Victor. Victor has a really unique build. He's built like a deer. He's very lanky, very wiry, very twitchy, very explosive, very smooth when he's tracking the ball. I saw him do a pirouette. He was expecting a ball towards the sideline over his inside shoulder, and he tracked it to his outside shoulder, and he did like a quick little 180 while it was on the boundary. He went on his toes and 180'd, and if the ball was like 5 inches closer, he would have reeled it in, but it was just off of his very outside hand fingertip. So Victor has shown some really nice ability to dive for catches, work in rhythm. He's just a very light guy. He's not very physical. So, if you're throwing up jump balls against a very physical cornerback who likes to play hands-on, not his cup of tea, but him and McSorley have developed a really nice rapport. And with some injuries, with some different things going on, Deion Kane has now been out for a while. Victor has a chance to kind of sneak up and be that 7th, 6th guy that gets kept. And, maybe, if Bateman has to start on the IR and miss the first 3 weeks, you never know. So Victor's someone to watch out for as well. Of course, there's other guys like Ben Mason, whatever, but those are the guys that really interest me. Tyson Williams as well, the running back. So just going to run through some questions really quickly here. Excited for the Sammy Watkins renaissance. Hopefully they keep him in a good place. How concerned are you about Villanueva at right tackle? I'm not that concerned, to be honest. I think that he's going to be an above average tackle. He's going to get beat and people are going to flip out about it, but he's going to be, not getting beat as much as someone who's a real problem. I don't think he's a blue chip guy. I don't think he's bad. I think he's an above average tackle that has length. So I think a lot of that is going to develop through the season of him understanding how to use his length in harmony with Lamar Jackson's ability to, force defenses to not try to rush past him, and understanding the angles that he needs to be at using his length to help Lamar Jackson escape up, or, how to seal guys so that Lamar can have a comfy pocket. So I think there's going to be a progression that goes on throughout the season of him getting better and better. Hey, Baltimore beatdown. Bummer about Bateman missing times. The biggest moment. Biggest question is O-line. The thing about the offensive line for me is that you've got one blue chip guy. You've got Ronnie Stanley. Bradley Bozeman, solid player. Zeitler, pretty solid guy. Had a disappointing year last year, but I'm not going to pretend like I watched all of his snaps. His PFF grade was low or whatever, but he knows the AFC North. The Ravens offense is an offensive lineman's dream. So I feel like it's maybe the most balanced group in terms of a 5-man talent that they've had for Lamar. But you don't have, Yonda Hall of Famer, Stanley and All-Pro, and Brown, a good player. a Pro Bowl kind of guy. So, but they don't have, that left guard weakness that they had his rookie year. Last year, shit hit the fan and injuries happened. So I think that it's going to be a work in progress. Phillips is the wild card to me. I think that he gives you some level of security at tackle, and he might be the starter at left guard. So then you're talking about Ben Powers. To me, is a really good backup. I think he's a really good backup at offensive guard. As long as Bozeman can stay healthy and be an upgrade at center, if they can really shore up center, get that over with, have that be kind of not even a strength, just not a weakness in terms of ability to sustain blocks and maybe generate some movement in the run game. That's going to be huge for this offense. So I think the offensive line is balanced, but not that talented. Ronnie Stanley's obviously the headliner, but he is also recovering from injury. Looks good. He's going to have to get in shape. Get some weight off and all that stuff. But it's all good stuff. So this is a question that I like. Is Duve above Prochet on the depth chart? Prochet is playing a lot of flanker. Flanker is the guy that is off the line of scrimmage that can come in motion. The flanker is usually more of a toy because they can come in motion. They're usually someone that can do jet sweeps or, orbit motion or boomerang. In other words, orbit return motion, things like that. So he gets a lot of time there. Prochet gets a lot of time in the slot. He gets a lot of time in kind of tighter alignments in two-man route concepts that are bunches, or also working from the X. So trying to face press directly. People don't try. The thing is that teams don't try to press the Ravens that much. They just simply are too scared that Lamar Jackson is going to play, break the pocket, do those kinds of things. So they want their cornerbacks to be able to see and then help corral Lamar Jackson. So, they like to stack the box with 7 or 8, have 1 high safety or 2 high safety, and then have the corners play at 5 to 7 yards. So beating press isn't a huge deal for the Ravens in comparison with other teams. They don't face a lot of it in comparison with other teams. So Prochet, might be able to work some boundary. He was beating up on guys earlier in camp that was like Khalil Dorsey and some of the second and third string guys. He's been able to start to kind of win some on Marlon Humphrey and guys like that, because early in camp, it was kind of, him and Humphrey didn't have a ton of reps against each other, but Humphrey was putting him in jail like pretty much every time. So separation's not the name of his game. They're just very different players. Duvernay has a lot more speed. He is way physically stronger. Both of them have good hands. Prochet is a very short strider. He's very choppy. His frequency of his strides are much shorter, so he can cut off some more harsh angles that make it more difficult for defensive backs to break, and he can work back to the ball much quicker that way because of the angles he's able to make adjustment-wise. So they're not above each other on the depth chart. They're playing different positions. They have different skill sets and different roles. So there's going to be certain plays, certain packages where both of them are on the field. There's going to be certain packages where one of them is on the field. Who do I think takes more snaps ultimately? Let's say, Rashad Bateman does come back from injury. Let's say, first quarter of the season, somewhere week 3, week 4, and Watkins is healthy and Hollywood's healthy. I think you're going to want Duvernay on the field because of what he can do as a runner, because of what he can do in the option game, because of what he can do vertically. I think he's doing some different things than Prochet. If I had to say, I would say Prochet will outsnap Duvernay will outsnap Prochet this year a good bit, but I think both of those guys have pretty key ancillary roles. So it's not one or the other necessarily. Rashad getting surgery. I'm curious to know how Prochet handles his reps versus tough pressure from the line. So I just touched on that. I mean, Prochet, he is a very crafty route runner. He is very deliberate in fakes and breaking outside to go inside and trying to set guys up. Because he doesn't threaten with speed, he has to be more crafty. He does get contested a good bit. He can't run away from guys, but he does a good job shielding the ball with his body, things like that. He's just more of a contested catch kind of guy. He's more of a, he's very quick in short spaces, but he's not threatening guys vertically, so they feel more comfortable playing closer to him, playing on him more. And that's what I think people are going a little crazy in camp. The Ravens offense isn't designed to throw the ball into tight windows that often. They don't like to do it. Lamar does it more than people realize. If you go on Next Gen Stats, you can actually look at that. That's available to the public. There's tight window throw percentage. I think he's like a little. I think he's below average, but he's not towards the bottom. Like some guy, Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw to tight windows as much as you think he does. Things like that. So go check that out. But the Ravens offense is built on efficiency, high completion percentage, easy throws. You want to get guys open, all that kind of stuff. So someone who is asking Lamar, who throws the ball less than most pretty much every team does, the Ravens throw the ball less. They want guys who are open. They don't want to be throwing into contested windows all the time. So trusting a guy to fight for the ball, Lamar will throw to Andrews contested every time. Every time he'll throw it to Andrews if he thinks Andrews has a shot. He trusts Andrews to make the play. So being on the same page is good. Prochet's also been working his tail off. He knows how to win. He still knows how to win. I'm not saying he's a slow receiver. He's like a 4 or 5 guy. He's got enough speed to do some things, but he's shifty. He's crafty. He's smart. So he's tough. He's focused. He's determined. So all those things. So that's what I'm going to higher ceiling. They've got different skill sets. We'll just leave it at that. That's enough on those two guys. I hope we don't regret not going Owe and Tryon in round 1. I think you're saying getting both as opposed to Bateman. I love me some Joe Tryon. That was the Baltimore Beatdown podcast. We did the Beatdown Big Board, and we had the contest where we kind of had the fans decide a board, and then we did one and the fans did one. The fans decided on Bateman. Jake and I decided on Tryon. We like Tryon. I had Tryon over Owe. I was, a little like, okay. I said it went against what the Ravens typically do. So it caught me off guard that they took Owe because he didn't have sack production, which the Ravens typically value. But I like the fact that they were willing to look past that, see the traits. They had a confident evaluation. They love what they did in the workout, all that good stuff. So, it's, that's an early overreaction saying, Tryon definitely, I think, is going to be a strong player. I think he would have fit the Ravens system very well. He's very similar to Judon. I think Owe is somewhat similar to Judon as well in terms of height and pursuit and, tenacity and those kinds of things. Tryon maybe a more seasoned pass rusher in ways, but, had a little bit better bull rush than Owe does, better speed. So if you had those two guys, you'd be able to do some interesting things. But Bateman it was a hell of a pick. They just, felt like he got rushed back from being hurt, and that turned into injury. So, it is what it is. They're saying Andrews looks a little leaner, quicker, better route running this year. Is that something you're seeing as well? He gets better every year, man. He had if you go watch Andrews at Oklahoma, he kind of didn't have cut arms. He still had some baby fat, just maybe a little bit. He was, in good shape, whatever. He was fast, but he continues to get leaner. He continues to get older. Tight ends peak when it feels like they're in the middle of their second contract. Tight ends a lot of the time get better, in that 5 to 8 year range. They're kind of the exact opposite of running backs, where they peak in their second and third contracts. Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Darren Waller, all these guys, whoever you want. Zach Ertz was best, in second contract. So he's getting to that point where he's still got the speed and quickness. He's getting leaner, but he's also developing more savvy. He sees more situations. He's getting really technically refined. Andrews, his hands, he can really reel in some tough catches, but I just don't think he has the most consistent hands in the world. He's going to drop passes. It is what it is. He kind of will let the ball come lodge into him. Like if it's a deep seam, those are the ones he actually feels most comfortable with. But when it's hands away from the body, I don't always trust it. Doesn't have, the best hands in the world, but he definitely is a great receiver as a tight end, developing in the blocking game, all that stuff. So I think he's going to be very good for the rest of his career overall. Phillips looked good on his 1 versus 3 when he blocked 2 and then ran by the 3rd, had power and quick hands. Yeah, Phillips is showing a lot of good stuff. I don't think people are talking about Phillips enough. Oliver is going to be a fun weapon. Do we see a lot of 3 tight end sets in the red zone offense? Have you seen any of this during camp? So the misconception about I used to write, for those of you who weren't here 2 years ago, the 2019 season, I used to call it the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. It was Hurst, it was Andrews, it was Boyle, and it was Ricard. I think people misconstrue. The Ravens only ran 3 tight end sets. I think it was 5.2% of their plays, but they ran 2 tight end sets, number 2 in the NFL behind the Eagles. Those were the 2 by far heaviest teams in 12 personnel. So will there be some of those 3 tight end sets in the red zone? Sure. And you can include Ricard, Ricard and Mason, maybe. We'll see what happens with Mason. Weird pick, whatever. So, towards the goal line, you're going to see more of those 3 tight end sets. And, in short yardage situations, 3rd and 1, things like that. But it's being able to have a 12 personnel with a guy like Hayden Hurst and Mark Andrews, where you're going to have to match up the linebackers. You're going to have to put 2, maybe 3 linebackers on the field, 22 personnel as well with Pat Ricard or whatever you want to do. If you can get defenses to match in base or nickel instead of nickel or dime, then go split out and you can get a matchup in space, whether it's Oliver, whether it's Andrews, whether it's one of the backs, one of the receivers. That is where Oliver is going to be the most effective. Going back to 12 personnel that really can create mismatches, because Oliver is going to be more of a mismatch down the field, be a better route runner, be more of a general weapon than Nick Boyle is. So, that Nick Boyle's coming off injury too. So you want to limit his snaps a little bit, especially at first, let him work back in and be a road grader in December and January. So those are definitely areas that are interesting. Let's see. Washington's college highlight reel is bananas to watch. Yeah, man. I mean, he was a Big 12 freshman defender of the year in 2019. He had 5 interceptions that year. I think he was freshman All-America, first team as well. Shaun Wade. This is the thing about Shaun Wade. He's not great in man coverage. He's very bad in his transitions at the stem. So when receivers break, he's very sloppy there. He needs a lot of refinement there. But as a zone defender in nickel, as a blitzer, as someone playing against the run, he's very strong. He's going to be a great special teamer. He's a work in progress. That's why he's a 5th rounder. So Tavon's out there. I don't think they're going to trust Shaun Wade to be, let's say Tavon, heaven forbid, has another injury. Khalil Dorsey, they probably trust Khalil Dorsey over Wade, at least for like 2 months, it feels like, unless he makes crazy strides right now. But he's a really physical player. When it's kind of like, if he's covering like a tight end or he's covering someone who's less shifty, threatens less at the stem, he's really physical through the ball, through the catch point. So he's a work in progress, but I think he's going to be a good player next year as they continue to work on his ability to transition. Queen looks better. Yeah, I just think Queen generally looks better. He looks really confident. He's beating his chest after stuffing the run. In pass coverage, he's gotten his hands on a couple footballs. I haven't seen an interception, which is disappointing, but I think he's going to be more confident. How does Queen look when he's taking on pullers? I watched him and Villanueva go at it pretty hard on I want to say it was like a stretch type play, like an outside zone type play. And Queen, what I liked, Villanueva got first. You could see his hands start to come out first. And Queen very violently came over top with a double chop. And then he reset. And Villanueva was able to kind of grab him with his outside hand, but it's quicker hands and it's that karate warfare that goes on as a defensive player. Whoever gets hands wins. That is, when you're taking on an offensive lineman and they get hands on you inside in your chest, you're done. You're done unless you have crazy, crazy, crazy athletic ability that is like, elite in the NFL. So he has to make himself skinny, number one, which I think he's doing a good job of. And he needs to keep his chest clean. You have to keep going through. You can't try and lock out a 6'5" tackle in the NFL that's a starting caliber tackle or guard. They're going to beat you. So beating them to their spot is more difficult than it was in college. I think he had a rough transition with that. And, taking on pullers, I just like him being able to be the free backer. I just think he's better on the weak side. I think he's built for the weak side. I think he's a player that is more so built like a running back and can mirror a running back at an elite level. I would rather have, Fort or Harrison more consistently being the play side, strong side linebacker. And then in coverage, I think Queen is going to be a work in progress. Calais Campbell is talking about him, and you can tell that Campbell doesn't think Queen is where he's going to be, but that also implies that Queen still has work to do. So I think we see a more consistent year, but at this point, to me, Queen is going to be a great player as a blitzer. He's going to be a great player as a weak side linebacker that can mirror and a guy that can then pursue really well, chase down speedier players. But he's just not the big hulking type of dude that's going to be able to be like Malik Harrison and run through contact and just win in a lockout. Harrison's got over an 80-inch wingspan. He's 250 pounds. He's 6'3". Like Harrison can beat. Harrison stunned Quentin Nelson and made his neck snap back last year. So just different players, different things. Owe was beasting today. Owe just continuing to grow. They weren't in pads, so it's just the biggest thing for Owe is pads come on. And is he going to be a dominant force tackling running backs, chasing down quarterbacks and finishing plays, things like that? That's where, there's questions. Which backup guard is most likely to be traded? I would definitely say Bredesen, probably Bredesen. Probably Bredesen. I don't know. I'm curious to see how that all plays out. But I don't think they're in the business of getting rid of anybody on the offensive line. They want to keep anyone who another team wants, they probably want to keep. And the only things I can think that the Ravens might want is maybe a defensive lineman, someone who can play some 3-tech, some 1-tech, kind of like a meatier player than a Justin Matabuike, a Broderick Washington kind of guy, maybe a little bit more skillful than that. So it's interesting there. Away with the basketball background should be able to use those jokes and spin move and counters he spoke about. The presser, yeah, it's the hezzy, and then he's also got the length. So being able to freeze somebody and then stun them with a stab, that's where his game needs to be. If tackles, he's going to face tackles that are athletic enough to set on him, unless he's a Hall of Fame speed rusher. Somebody's going to be able to set on him. When that day comes, you have to win with the long arm, with the stab, and then you need to be able to counter off of it, whether it's just continuing the stab, whether it's stabbing into a swipe or a chop, or whether it is stabbing to work inside. I already touched on that earlier. So that's where his game needs to develop. Victor's probably, I don't know, might be wrong. I think like 6'1", 6'2", probably 6'1" to 6'2 and a half is my guess. Tim Patrick type. No, Patrick's way more physical. But I like where your head's at. Point Break Keanu for the win. Yeah, whatever. I missed the Boykin analysis. If there was one, percentage points of him making the roster. I think it's higher than people realize just because of what he does as a blocker and how much they seem to like him. And they kind of have that sunk cost fallacy with him where it's like they've put in so much work. They want to see it work out, but it should be up to Keith Williams, man. It should be up to Keith Williams. Exactly. Garnett's on it. 2 different positions. Duvernay can play the Z and flank. Prochet is going to be more of a slot into twins, into bunch, into, X, in, some different things. Chris Westry is a lock to me. What about you? Thank you for the information. I know you were big on Westry, Garnett, so it's difficult to say he's a lock because we haven't seen him tackle. So it's going to be a lot different when the pads come on. Can he be that dominant sort of player and also not be a complete and utter liability if someone actually catches the ball, or if, can he get off blocks? Can he be physical? All that stuff. So seemed like he was at Kentucky somewhat, but he is very light, and with that comes durability. With the hitting comes durability for cornerbacks. So it's a little bit different. Deion Kane will get plenty of opportunity. I'm not sure if he's playing or not. He's missed 2 days. Hopefully he does. Jordan Katz, I see your comment. That's going to be my closer. I am wearing the Mancini shirt right now, so there we go. Deion Kane's missed practice. Hopefully he's able to go. Had a really good camp. Like him a lot. Like him maybe better than Boykin. Who do you think gets cut? I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet. We haven't seen a preseason game. Things are going to change. Special teams are going to be huge. Queen has that prototypical new age linebacker body. The interesting thing about Queen is obviously his PFF grade was so low, but when you're going through Sports Info Solutions and you look at things like total points saved, which is kind of like EPA considering the other 10 players on the field and what the offense does and your opponent, I mean, he's really high. He's like Queen in EPA and in total points metrics is like right where Deion Jones is, like solid, very solid. But he missed some tackles, and PFF kind of has that subjectivity to it. And I do think that Queen really struggled at times, but it's just the consistency in getting there. Queen, I mean, you look at a guy like Tremaine Edmonds in Buffalo, and he still hasn't put it all together. He's still not playing at a really high level. He's still, he was drafted at 20. He was a first-round pick, and he has all these tools, and he just still hasn't quite put it together. So Queen, to me, I just don't think this year maybe he's going to get – the Ravens aren't going to take him off the field. They love him to death. He doesn't even play special teams. They love him. They're developing him. They love Patrick Queen. To me, he's just not going to be that top 5 type linebacker right now until he really desperately needs to have like a month of good games with limited mistakes. I think it's all up here right now. And if he can have a point in this season, maybe October, November, December, where he has a month of very high level play, if he can just get a couple games, maybe if it's even 3 games together, I think that's going to do so much for him mentally. And then he's going to be able to overcome, a lot that is going on in here. That's very subjective analysis, but I've been watching the kid very closely for a while. So I think his issues compound because of confidence. So I think he's got the traits, but I think he just needs to get into a very stable, confident place consistently and be playing more instinctively through film study. I hate the word instincts because instincts are made in the film room. But if he can be more confident in his film room study and what he's seeing and be less, like, okay, well, if they go in motion, then wait. Just let it go. Let it go. Play with the instincts of your intelligence. Let your intelligence be your instincts. Trust that he's a smart dude, very well spoken, very confident. At LSU, he made so many high-level plays. He made many high-level plays last year. Just over pursued at times, play a little too quick, all that good stuff. But Queen can be a really good linebacker this year. I think he needs one more year to have the ability to be a top-level linebacker. But if you're not getting it done in year 3 at that level, I don't know that you're going to be that guy in this defense. Maybe. I mean, you can look at a guy like Demario Davis though. Demario Davis played for the Jets. He was this 2-down linebacker and thumper, really good. Kind of got overlooked, typecasted as a 2-down linebacker. Goes to the Saints, like does all that good stuff. In a way more kind of structured and free flowing defense that the Saints have with the 4-man front and. Whatever, turns into an all-pro level linebacker for years into his 30s. So, that doesn't always happen. But, I mean, look at LJ Fort. LJ Fort to me is I love LJ Fort. I think he's such a talented player. I think he's so smart. I think he's so consistent. And they're going to want to get these younger guys reps, and they should be. But LJ Fort is just such a good example. And we've got a comment right here because Queen has to slow down. If you're unsure at all, just maintain your responsibility, especially in pass coverage. Maintain your hook zone, maintain that area, and then let the play come to you. And the play that comes to mind for me is when Queen, who is a dynamic, outstanding blitzer, and I think could have an 8, Devin White-like 7-8 sack year this year because he's so damn good at blitzing. Queen beats up on the screen against the Titans on, I think, 3rd down or 4th down against the Titans in the playoffs. And Queen, whoops Derrick Henry, and then there's a little screen, or he whooped somebody. Maybe it wasn't Henry. I don't know. And then Tannehill has to dump the ball off real quick to Henry. And you just see Fort just very calmly turn the angle, go with the ball, shoot it as soon as Henry turns upfield. Fort hits right through his hip, takes him to the ground. So, I mean, Fort is such a good example of what Queen needs to do mentally on a play-to-play basis, over the course of a game. Let it come to you. You don't always have to make the perfect play. You don't always have to be the savior, all those things. Let some of them come to you and then rely on that incredible athleticism. That's what he has more than of LJ Fort, but to the nth degree is being able to rely on your athleticism to chase, to make the play once you know where the ball is going. And in the run game, you don't have that much time. So the run game, you can't really do that as much, especially strong side. You need to be very fast mentally, but that doesn't mean that you have to be very fast physically. You just need to start, if guards are pulling, a team runs a lot of buck sweep or sweep concepts or something, 2 guards are pulling, you got to be able to follow, know where the ball is going, hit the right gap, and then after that, once you're doing that consistently, then you can start to get off the block, get off the puller and make the play. So, linebacker play is my favorite. I played linebacker. I've always studied linebacker. It's my favorite position in football. I love it. Queen has so much talent. He has so much ability. He's a very smart guy, but just he needs to look to LJ Fort and play that way a lot more. And being able to use his athleticism to make the play once it comes to him, especially in the pass game. In the run game, different story. Got to be quick. Don't want to over pursue. It's like a confident quickness, not, being shot out of a cannon every single time and overrunning stuff. So there's refinement there. It's just kind of decreasing the highs and the lows and the frantic kind of manic play and narrowing it down so that, there's you want to go like this to a certain point, and then you want it to on the low end, I guess this hand, you want it to shrink so that you can start to go like that again. So your worst play is going to be more consistent than, a lot of your best play is now. And that's just going to come with time. Raven spoke about how he's basically, it's like they cheated the system and got a year. He was 20. He only started 1 year at LSU. Exactly. Another great point. Know where your help is. Know where the safeties are. Know where you've got another linebacker. Know all of that stuff. Know what you can't afford to do, and that's vacate your hook a lot of the time. Eric Ebron scored a touchdown in Baltimore on a crossing route because There was like it was like a mesh concept or maybe a drive, something like that. There's a couple crossers on it, and Queen just jumped the first one, and LJ Fort was there. LJ Fort was there. He didn't need to jump it. He vacated his zone, and then a touchdown walks in because he left a 7-yard area of the field in the red zone occupied. You can't do that. You have to, it's knowing where your help is, and it's also trusting your teammates to make plays. You don't have to be Superman every single play. When the time comes, make the play. That is playing linebacker. That is playing defensive football as well. Stay in your assignment, trust your teammates, and go make the play when it presents itself to you. You got to have trust for the other guys to execute their jobs. You can't be, in the run game, you can't be vacating your gap trying to go make a play in someone else's gap. You got to trust Justin Madubuike. You got to trust Derek Wolfe. I mean, you've got great run defenders up front. Let them do their job. Let them do their job. So Patrick Queen, very important year this year. Very excited to see what he does. Very excited to see him in the preseason. Again, like Justin Madubuike, Queen had a full year last year. He's a first-round pick. He needs to outclass everyone this year, especially if he gets into some second team reps and, the mixed bag where it's the rookies and the younger guys and some of the starters. Outclass those guys, especially in simple hook, curl, zone, spot drops. Man coverage, it's tough. It's really hard. Linebackers aren't great at it. There's very few linebackers that can go match up with receiving-oriented threats and things like that. So that's enough on Patrick Queen. Any nuggets on seeing Houston taking the younger guys under his wing? Touched on this a couple days ago. Is the last one I'm going to take. Got to get out of here. But Houston, the first day I saw Houston, I didn't see his first day, but the first day I saw him was Monday. I had a wedding this weekend I had to go to. But it was unbelievable. He, hour into practice, they've gone through some team stuff. They split into offense and defense, doing some different things. And sometimes there's different groups that are like, all right, it's hot. You guys have been working. Take a break. Houston takes all the linebackers. Pernell McPhee, I think, had a vet day. So it was, it's Bowser, it's Ferguson, it's Aaron Adoye, it's Hayes, it's Away, all of them. And he is just grabbing guys and giving a full-on demo of how to Euro step and how to slide and doing all kinds of different things. He's going through, how to have someone grab his hand. So if a blocker gets there, chop through every single time, chop my own hat, chop through, things like that. So it was just really funny. I've very rarely seen a player basically have a coaching session as if they were a coach. So that goes to show, obviously, and again, it's just crazy to me. Campbell and Houston are two of the most intelligent and experienced pass rushers of their generations. Neither of them are physically, Calais is huge and he's got the length, so it's a little different, but neither of them are really these explosive, they're not Chase Young. They're not Aaron Donald. They're not winning just off the line every time. They have black belts in pass rushing karate. So having two of those on one team with Madubuike, with a guy like Patrick Queen, Malik Harrison, Adafe Owe, Dalen Hayes, even Tyus Bowser, who doesn't have a ton of true pass rushes on it to his belt, it's going to help so much. Having two of those guys is really nuts because you're going to be getting, double the time. You're going to have Campbell and Houston at times talking all of it together. I mean, Campbell has spent time on the edge. I think in Jacksonville, he spent like a lot of his time at 5-tech, like 5-tech outside shade of the tackle. So those guys are both incredible assets. I wish the Ravens had more younger front seven players for them to be on this roster right now, but it's got to be, like I said, Madubuike is working with Aaron Donald and his kind of nugget. He went on the lounge and his nugget was basically like, he didn't say much. He just said, basically, you have to go as hard as you possibly can every rep, every day. Go harder than you think you can possibly go. And you can tell on Madubuike's explosiveness. I know this was about kind of Houston, but I just want to touch on Madubuike before I got out of here. When he hits a sled, he is exploding out of his stance into a sled. When he is doing a one-on-one drill, he is exploding out of his stance. He is so fast off the ball. Having guys like that, Away and Bowser, who have speed and explosion off the ball, that's how you hunt down Josh Allen. That's how you hunt down Patrick Mahomes. That's how you hunt down Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, all those guys. When you've got a player that can actually take away their escape angles and force them to retreat backwards or flat instead of being able to roll and curl upfield and throw the ball on the run, like shoulder forward, different ball game, different stuff. So that's been a problem for the Ravens. I think being able to win inside and blitz inside and then have guys like Owe have a neutral rush and then go chase Mahomes is something that can definitely help. a lot of ways. So Oweh is getting a lot of expectations put on them. I would definitely say temper them. Understand he's a rookie. Understand he's going to make mistakes. I mean, hey, there's a lot of people right now that are betting on him for defensive rookie of the year. There's guys like Jalen Phillips and stuff, but J.C. Horn, Patrick Surtain, maybe, who knows? But hey, it's not out of this world of possibilities when Calais Campbell is saying the man has infinite potential, and he's Alejandro Villanueva is saying he's the fastest guy on the field and all this kind of stuff. So it's very interesting stuff coming along with these younger Ravens front seven defenders. I think that's a really fun, kind of less popular storyline to follow through the preseason and through the regular season is the development of even Bowser as a full-time player, finally, most likely Oweh, Hayes, Matabuike, all these younger guys, even Broderick Washington, man. So I'm excited to see all those guys. That's definitely something to watch out for. And I appreciate it. I'm going to have to get out of here, but appreciate you guys for logging in. Pod comes out tomorrow. That's going to be talking with Vasilios Nicolau, who formerly worked for WBAL. Now he's working down in New Orleans, covering the Saints and doing the Saints sports production for one of their local stations there. So it was more of a Saints-based, interview overall. So it's some insight into Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill and kind of the psyche of the Saints right now in a weird time post Drew Brees, things like that. So it's a good one. But appreciate you guys. Do all the stuff you're supposed to do that YouTubers ask you to do, like whatever, like it, share it, put it in a bottle and put it in the ocean, whatever it is. Appreciate you guys. And let's watch some Ravens football. First game of 2021. Let's get it started Saturday. I'll be there, DM me, whatever, if anybody wants to meet up. Appreciate you guys. I'll talk to you later. See ya.